All right, so I have to ask you, are you asking yourself, are you asking your team, are you asking the universe, what the heck CMS should I use? Well, then you're in luck because today we are going to actually be looking at HubSpot versus WordPress. And when I say we, that's going to be Remington and myself, but we'll get into the introductions in a minute. Here's the thing. What I want you to realize over the next 35 to 45 minutes, we are literally trying to create the most amount of value to your life. To the age-old question that we get is, what the heck CMS should I use for my relaunch or for my brand new website? And we're going to cover all the ins and outs. And there's a couple reasons why, but before we get into the reasons why, I do want you to realize there are some timestamps down below in the description. You can jump around to the actual major questions that you have, or you can sit back and watch the entire thing that we're putting together. It's totally up to you. This is your video, your resource, but there it is. It's going to be a lot, but there's a couple things, couple reasons why we're doing this. But Remington, before we dive in, some of people might not know us. This might be like, hi, hello, how are you doing on the internet? So why don't you take just a couple minutes to explain who you are? I'll explain who I am. We'll explain who Impulse Creative is, and then we'll get into the resource.
Hi there, I'm Remington Begg, CEO, co-founder of Impulse Creative. We are a revenue operations agency, and we help your business grow smarter.
Now, that was short and succinct. Man, I'm telling you, you just went to town right there. I am George B. Thomas, inbound evangelist of same Impulse Creative Agency. I love to create videos. Obviously, we do Sprocket Talk, Impulse Creative videos, and that's why you're sitting in front of your computer or your mobile device. Or, hey, have you checked us out on the TV yet? Because we're there too. Anyway, let's get into this. Remington, there's some reasons why we wanted to create this video. I'll take the first one, and that is that things have changed, right? Like if you look on the interwebs and people are doing these WordPress versus HubSpot, HubSpot versus WordPress, whatever title they use, like there has been a lot in the last 6 months, last year, that has dramatically changed the conversation around why we wanted to do this video. What else did we want to do this video for, Remington?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, Jackie's in charge of new business at the agency. And one of the biggest things she runs up against is this bias of that's not possible on HubSpot, which is false. And we'll get into that later too.
Yeah, another reason that we wanted to do this video is because we wanted to get a little bit more in depth. As we watched some of the other videos, looked around for the resources that we know that you're watching, they really didn't go as deep as they could to really give the benefits of the different platforms. So we want to go in depth more as well. Remington, what's a couple other reasons that we might want to do this resource for the folks?
Yeah, so I think that there's companies are really doubling down. They're reassessing their digital strategy. They're reassessing, like when I say digital strategy, it goes beyond just the marketing strategy. It's like a lot of people are reassessing their business even right now. And where the website used to work for just being a marketing function, that was like a shiny website over here. Now it's like it is and should be an integral part of their business. And so, there's different needs there. It's no longer one-dimensional. So I think that as we get into this video today, we're going super deep in a couple different areas. But what I love most about this is it's not going to be like one answer fits all. It's literally just laying it out and letting people decide from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say last but not least, we're having this video, creating this video, spending time for you because golly gee, it's one of the major questions we get asked. And so now we'll have a video that we can actually deliver to people and say, I know that's some old school TV right there. I don't know if anybody pick up on that. But Remington, you put in our notes when we were kind of talking about what we wanted to do today, you started to lean into why WordPress in the first place. So why don't you go ahead and wax poetic on that, and then we'll just kind of dive in.
Yeah, I think it's funny because the agency's going to be 14 years old this year. Which is insane. We've been around since several iterations back in the Joomla days before WordPress was even really like a serious thing. We were having similar conversations about Joomla versus WordPress, right? And now like fast forward a few years, then it's, WordPress versus Squarespace. And then fast forward further, now it's, any cloud software versus WordPress. And WordPress is like that anchor that a lot of these are comparing against. And I think it's unfair. And what I mean by that is WordPress is open source. And with that you're opening up the door to potential vulnerabilities. When we start thinking about the appeal for WordPress is like, who owns it? And I'm using air quotes here for those that are just listening or not looking at the video, because that's a really important piece. So who owns the website? Well, yes, you technically own the website, but you're leasing space on a hosting server that is hopefully not under your desk. And that means that it's not much different than a lot of these other tools. And then there's lots of other things beyond that. But getting back to your question, so like, why WordPress in the first place? I think WordPress has made a really good job of making it low impact to enter. And then it's turned into this Swiss Army knife of different things that you could cobble together to create a solution. But I go all the way back to when WordPress first started, and even like the most recent updates to WordPress. And I'm super nerdy, so I don't expect everyone to get this, but they still rely on post types. The whole post term is because WordPress was intended to be a blog. It was not intended to be a fully featured website. And that's one of my opinions. The fundamental issues is that it's hard to cobble it together to make it a business class website. It's possible and it's accessible to make it that way, but is it right? Right. And I think that a lot of people come into that bias of WordPress is the standard, and that scares the daylights out of me, because if WordPress is the standard, just Google WordPress hacks and see some kind of stats on that. And that is one of the biggest liabilities a company could have right now.
And I want everybody to know we're going to dig deeper into the security issues in the show a little bit later. And I do want everybody to understand that we are coming at this from a standpoint of, we are not coming one-dimensional. We're not coming at this from a bias. And one thing that we should let everybody know is that, hey, we've created WordPress websites before. My personal website has been on WordPress before. Is it now? No. Is it on HubSpot CMS? Yes. But have we gotten nerdy and used things like Elementor, Beaver Builder, Monster Insights, like almost every plugin known to man for WordPress? Yes. So we have lived on that side.
Or even built it from scratch, right? Like you could build WordPress, like, a real plugin developer or a real WordPress developer when you ask them the last plugin they built, not used.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the difference between a WordPress developer, like a real developer, and a web designer that knows how to put together WordPress. Unfortunately, that's where that bias comes in too. But yes, this is going to be like even keel on both sides to kind of set the record straight. But it's a huge thing to really understand the difference, because what someone says is possible versus not could just be what they have in their head, not the actual possibilities.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know what we don't know until we figure out or learn what we don't know, which is, again, why we're here. Use the timestamps below. We'll have them there for you. Jump around. Remington, when you think of the unappreciated aspect of HubSpot versus WordPress, lean into this whole thing that you love to preach on about data and context that you have with one versus maybe the other, or what that looks like.
We get a lot of comparisons all the time about WordPress versus HubSpot. That's half the reason for this video in the first place. We are some of the unique agencies that can develop from scratch on both. And I think that's a powerful piece to understand. When we're coming up and talking about comparisons, we're not talking about the ease of use from a development standpoint, but we do come at it from the ease of use for the marketer, for the people who'd actually be in it every day. We don't want anyone to be shackled. And so when we start talking about the comparisons overall, you start getting into this concept that people are comparing feature to feature, which we're going to get into a lot of features, but feature to feature. And I think one of the biggest issues, and probably one of the most underappreciated things about the marketing stack in general, is the power of the CRM data, right? We've got this cobbled together. We've got Salesforce that, a WordPress form submits into Salesforce, or even HubSpot for that matter, that pushes into that, right? The platform by itself, WordPress or HubSpot CMS, are going to be pretty pretty close to the same in regards to what's possible in the front end user experience until you bolt on the customer data aspect. And now we're talking about a completely different thing. We're talking about experience. And I think that for salespeople internally, there's a really compelling use case for having the CRM data. For the user, it's the difference between shopping at Amazon, and shopping at, Best Buy, even though it's come a really long way on their website since they've been getting cleaned up, right? So it's just the difference between the two mindsets and the platforms. And that's where you start to see a really big separation, is when you start thinking about like making it, finding the smarter way for the business and the experience to operate. So that's like the big riff on it, is the availability of data that connects to a CRM for that experience. It's possible in both, to be clear. It's probably about 3 times more work to do it not on HubSpot CMS. And you've got to assess whether that's worth it.
Yeah, definitely, because time is money, people. I'm just going to throw that out there. Time is money. And what I hear, Remington, and I hope everybody else heard, is the fact that, look, if your relaunch or your new website is designed to be a brochure, static and always version A, no matter who you are and what you've done around your business, okay. But if you want it to be dynamic, if you want it to give that Amazon style, that contextual, personalized, one-to-one feel, then you really have to think about how much time does WordPress take me to do that? How much time does HubSpot take me to do that? And are my customers worth that? Yeah, they're worth that. By the way, they're worth that. So let's dig into really the nitty gritty. We're going to start driving down this road of features. And Remington, the place that I wanted to start is like, if somebody opens up a new, fresh WordPress, and they try to like create a site on their own, or they're hiring an agency. Some will hire an agency that are watching this. Some will actually try to create it on their own. Like the default vanilla version of WordPress, immediately somebody will think to themselves, well, this is kind of difficult to make it look exactly like I want. So they go into this version of, I need a page builder. They go, I need something that allows me to lay out the screen.
Can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
Can we pause for a second? The vanilla WordPress, when you install it without all the rest of the stuff, is called a blog.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is. You have to install it, and then you have to start building, right? And I mean building from like the infrastructure, not even from the content standpoint. And so immediately people go into page builders. Okay, so I'm going to wax poetic on the WordPress side, and then I'm going to turn it over to you and let you talk about a little bit about the HubSpot side. So usually if you're looking for a page builder, and they've come a long way, but it used to be like Visual Basic, and then it was like Beaver Builder, and now Elementor has taken the world by storm, and there's a ton that you can do with Elementor, and they're smart because they're paying attention to how can Elementor actually work with HubSpot, by the way, because so they understand the power of HubSpot in themselves. Which, by the way, we're going to talk at the very end of this about like, well, what if you have to get them to work together? Like if you're just stuck in that scenario, we don't want to leave you hanging. But here's the thing. As soon as you start adding a builder, you're adding a little bit of simplicity that actually is complexity, meaning it's now more complex because you have to learn, well, what are all these modules and what's a row and how does this row go and what's the settings that I have to set in Elementor or Beaver Builder and like all of these other pieces. Plus, you're adding fundamentally to the code, and I'm going to try by all that is holy, not to sound like a broken record as we go through these different phases and I talk about plugins and adding to the code. Because every time I say something about adding a plugin, I want you to realize it's getting heavier and heavier, and it's slowing down site speed, and Google looks at site speed. So we've got a vanilla version. We want to be able to design it in the way we want it. So we add Elementor. Now we got rows, we got modules, we can start to drag things around. But man, did that take some time to, by the way, go buy Elementor? Either the time that it takes me or, you personally to put it in place, or to hire somebody to put it in place, you to pick out a theme. Maybe you got to buy that theme. Because here's the thing. You watch every other resource and they're like, well, WordPress is free. No, for a business, it's not. Like if you're an individual, maybe, but a business, you're going to buy a theme, or you're going to hire a developer. You're going to have to buy a page builder. You're going to purchase some of these premium plugins. So let's just get this off the board right now. And we'll talk deeper about costs later, but it's not free. So with that said, Remington, you turn on HubSpot and you want to go to town. Talk us through like the elements in the HubSpot CMS and what that looks like, because it's dramatically different in the last 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. I mean, current day right now, you turn on the CMS, you could have a brand new landing page matching your brand colors. If you're good at writing, good at typing, you could have the entire landing page done by the time the theme installs in WordPress. And that's just, or the builder is installed in WordPress. The couple big things on the HubSpot side that I think is really compelling that came out over the past year, and also pro tip, if you're going to get an agency to build you a website on HubSpot, you unapologetically should require it to be on the new drag and drop and theme functionality. Unapologetically. If it isn't, or they say it's not ready, run for the hills. I can't even paint that picture any more vividly. But when we start thinking about the efficiencies of it, it's blazing speed fast right out of the gate. Now, certain themes you choose, if you're going to the marketplace, like we've got a free one that's available, but you could jump into others. We have a paid one too, for the record, but you could jump into some of the others and you got to pay attention to their demos and how fast they load. But like out of the box, HubSpot themes are lightning fast. The functionality and getting in the drag and drop editor, HubSpot has default modules that you could do just about anything with. And then these themes can extend it in a very similar to way what Elementor can with their, I like to call them recipes, but the different modules you could drop in on the page. They're optimized. They're fully controlled. They are at a certain level of caliber that is not going to allow any vulnerability or really slow down in page speed between it. So it's just, I mean, it's ready. And not only the page, the landing pages for conversions, your forms are already optimized, and your blog is already set up. Like all of that in less time than it takes to install, because you just press a button to start a trial or press a button to start in the CMS and you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. The whole thing of transitioning to global themes, global content, drag and drop, additional modules. Because again, if you watch some of these other resources, they talk about how it's not scalable because there's no marketplace for modules. But there is a marketplace. There are people just creating modules like plugins, only not hackable. Anyway, I'm not going to ride that horse too long. But here's the thing, Remington, let's shift from page builders, because I think people get it. Like, it's faster, it's in there. You don't necessarily need to buy anything additional. It's in the cost of HubSpot. But when you think about SEO, and I'm going to have you lean in on the WordPress side of this one. When you think of SEO and WordPress, where does your brain go? And then I'll come on the other side and hit like the HubSpot items and some things that I love to talk about and teach when we're doing HubSpot onboardings and trainings and things like that.
Yeah, so there's two plugins that come to mind that used to be when WordPress was a lot of the sites we were doing way back when. It was the all-in-one SEO plugin, and then there was Yoast. Yoast was typically the preference. Now, it's worth noting both of those have had some pretty significant vulnerabilities over the past couple of years as well, just by themselves, not even mention the site. But that being said, the information that they surface and show at a page-by-page level or a post-by-post level is pretty awesome. You can put in a keyword. You got to remember what that keyword is for the record. You got to put that in, and then it shows you your stats and how you feel about the page. I almost look at Yoast as a vector that is going the opposite direction of all the plugins that you have in your website as well. So Yoast is like, hey, put these words on the page. And for the record, it's another plugin, but put all these words on the page so that you have the SEO. Make sure you have your title tag. Make sure you have, and it goes through all the like semantic stuff that should be on the page. And then if we get nerdy and we look at the actual page when it loads, all of the opposite things that would be horrible for a true SEO to look at a page, the amount of code on the page, the amount of inline styles that are on the page, the amount of scripts that are running, the amount of database calls that are going to random places, all of those things are an opposing vector to Yoast. You can work with an agency who hopefully has those vectors aligned where it's optimized for Yoast and all of the rest of the things are optimized as well. I say hopefully because we fix a lot of WordPress websites that did not have that thought process put in. And you're going to hear me say a theme. It's one-dimensional, let's throw Yoast on it and call SEO a day. that's not a thing you could do. It's a big picture. There's a lot of pieces to it. And HubSpot's not immune to that, which I know you're going to get to in a second. But you said something, George, the other day when we were teeing up this conversation about, you ask people something when they talk about Yoast or they bring it up. I'm going to let you actually talk that through, though.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is I'll say, hey, do you have Yoast or SEO by Yoast? And they'll be like, yes. And I'll say, do you use it? And they're like, well, we installed it. And I say, no, do you use it? And they're like, what do you mean? And for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I show them how they actually have to put a keyword phrase in, how they should customize the SEO title and the meta description with that keyword phrase, and then that there are suggestions that always are red. Like the fact that they have it installed and you don't see the traffic light is green or orange, but they're all red. Like the only thing you've done is add it to code and done nothing with it if you have installed Yoast. So here's the thing, and I love that you handed this over. If I want to tell you this, if you're rocking out WordPress right now and you don't have Yoast, by all that's holy, maybe get Yoast and start using it and actually get your SEO better. But if you're on this point where you're like, but I might just like redo the site and like that's why you're watching this video, then maybe hold off on that, because on the HubSpot side, what's going to happen is we're going to be able to hook into some really nerdy tools from a company you may have heard of. You may have heard of Google. They've been around for a while, but they have Search Console. And Search Console, we can integrate with Search Console into HubSpot. What that allows HubSpot to do is use Search Console to actually serve up recommendations. There's literally a recommendations home in HubSpot that you can read through, and you can go fix things that are happening on different pages and are broken. You also have on the page tools like landing page, blog, you have an optimizer, which is in essence what Yoast does with the suggestions. Hey, you're not using your keyword phrase in the meta description. Hey, your keyword phrase is in the title. Hey, this post is only 300 words. Maybe think about doing 700. Different things like that are in the optimizer. But even at a next level is they have the SEO tool, which leans into this new way that human beings are searching, and it serves up like, here's a pillar page, and here's blog articles or subtopics that would go around it. Here's a couple of landing pages that should connect into it. And actually you have a content cluster that you can build everything and link it together so that when one thing rises, they all kind of rise together. That's built in HubSpot by default. And if your blog is on HubSpot, if your pages are on HubSpot, all of that can link together. And what's nice is then you can measure it. And we'll get into reporting and analytics, but you can literally measure content clusters one against the other versus another. So imagine if I ask you, what's the 3 things that you want to be known for online? And you could create 3 content clusters, and you could sit back and see which content cluster is killing it and which one's not. How much more valuable would that be to you and your business than a plugin that you might not even be using right now? Like, world of difference.
I love that. I have an extra. You said if you don't have Yoast installed, install it. I'm going to say if you do have Yoast installed and you're not using, uninstall it. It'll make your website faster. Like remove the crap. Like that was the other thing. Like we had one client that we just went through and did an audit, and they had 4 SEO plugins. They must have thought that like if they added 4, that they got 4 times the SEO. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remove it. And a lot of times they conflict with each other too. So just look at your plugins, look how many are out of date, remove them if you're not using them, because so much volatility there.
Yeah, it's funny because, and this is even on our notes, but I have to lean into it since you brought it up. I don't know if most people who use WordPress know that every plugin that you install into your WordPress website actually has to load on the other side of it. So one of the things that we've historically done is even gone through and just done a plugin audit. Hey, why do you use this? Well, why do you use this one? Have no clue. What about these 2? Oh, that's the guy before me. What? So like you could delete 4 plugins because nobody even knows what they're doing or what they're for. And of course we check like to make sure we're not going to break anything. But like a plugin audit is something you should think about. Now, I want to dive deeper into, because I kind of like breezed into it and jumped back out real quick, is the whole analytics part of this, right? So Remington, I'll take the WordPress side, because typically if you want to see analytics or measurement in WordPress, you'll Google how to get Google Analytics into your WordPress website. And you'll literally install a plugin that pulls Google Analytics, kind of dumbs them down, puts them into a place that you can understand it as a human. Or you might get into something like Monster Insights. That's another plug. But again, it's a plugin, it's code, it's additional complexity. It's possible. You can do it. But are you paying attention to those metrics? And are you able to make smart decisions off of those metrics? Or are you literally installing a plugin so that you can say, I have the metrics, but again, almost like Yoast, not doing anything with it, right? So talk about how, and by the way, this could be an episode in itself. Remington, when you think of like analytics and reporting from a website standpoint and HubSpot, paint a little bit of a different picture and why that's important or what's going on there.
I lean in a couple different angles. So we're dealing with a bunch of global companies right now. We're doing multi-language variations. We're wanting to report on all these different angles, and it's out of the box. It shows traffic, leads, and customers. Now, that being said, you might not want a traffic, lead, and customer rate, but I think one of my favorite things about analytics is not the roll-up analytics where you get to see everything, like your Google Analytics home screen, right? Now, for the record, we still install Google Analytics on our HubSpot websites because there's some things that we can just get super ultra nerdy with. But that being said, the HubSpot analytics that are baked in are going to show you not only contact level analytics, so not like some guy in North Carolina visited my pricing page. It's George B. Thomas visited my pricing page, and he's been there 4 times, and he downloaded 47 ebooks. So say hey, right? Like that's that kind of level of analytics. But what I love about HubSpot's reporting is the granularity of it, and not like granularity like complexity. It's how is this page doing? How do we look at this page? What's the stuff that matters on here? How are the conversions on this page? What's the time on page? What's the bounce rate? Like all that stuff is just viewable on the page itself. And that can be really compelling. You could start to see like if you make changes or multivariate options, like analytics are going to be able to be compared at the page level, but then you could also zoom out and look at it a couple different ways. One of the big arguments I had with someone about functionality, and I say arguments, I mean friendly, was, well, I can't break things down by domain or subfolders or those types of things. And that's a myth. You actually can. It's called a view. You just create another traffic view and you can see the analytics. You could break it down by just my blogs, what kind of traffic, just my service pages, that kind of thing. So it's awesome. It's easy to understand, and one-click PowerPoint presentations if you need to get them to your boss. Do that, WordPress.
And again, we're trying to be unbiased here, but the fact, what I heard, Remington, when you were waxing poetic on that is there's so many dimensions. Like you can reposition your brain to look at it at a page level, at a campaign level, at sources. Like, is it social? Is it organic? Is it, like however you want to view what's happening with your website, like it's there for you. And by the way, it blows some people's minds when I say, hey, do you need a web analytics dashboard in HubSpot? And they say yes. And within like 15 seconds, I have an entire dashboard up for them that they can actually email to their team on a monthly basis in a reoccurring email off of the dashboard functionality. Like that right there, like it's just a game changer for most people.
Automatic PowerPoint documents on a weekly. Like it's not just like, hey, here's a cool chart. It's like, here's the beginnings of your PowerPoint deck.
Yeah. And if we're going to go that nerdy, you can even tell it to send you a zip file of PNGs that you can add into your own Keynote if you're a Mac user and like Keynote. Like so it's kind of crazy. Next thing that we want to talk about is scalability. So WordPress, I mean, that's one of the major things that people are like, oh, it's super scalable. We listen, I don't want to take a lot of time. We've talked about it. Monster Insights, Yoast SEO, social plugins, whatever, a bunch of plugins. It's scalable. You can make it do whatever you want it to do, but at what cost? As I watch these other resources on HubSpot versus WordPress, this is where people were saying, well, it's not scalable. Remington, I want you to, and again, this is something that's changed in the last 6 to 12 months. That's why this is the 2021 version of this ultimate guide for HubSpot versus WordPress. Like, talk about how scalable HubSpot now is because of some of these changes.
Lazy scalable before 2020. Maybe. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's right. So that's the pre-2020 fight. Now we start getting into the theming functionality, the ability for these modules in the marketplace, and like working with agencies that are building a theme for your website. Imagine someone builds you your own custom theme that is for you and no one else. Not like a WordPress theme that's going to be on ThemeForest if 47 people have the same site as yours, but a custom theme just for your company. And, scalability wise, there's a lot of really important things there. Enhancing your brand, making sure there's continuity, making sure that when someone comes in, a new person, they come in and they start falling into the line of what has been designed from a functional standpoint. God forbid someone jumps into your WordPress site and goes, oh, like you gave the example earlier, like, oh, like that was from some guy before me. Unfortunately, you can't delete that plugin because there's no documentation about what it's running. And you press delete and you could shut down everything. That's not very scalable, right? So we like to think of the one-to-many side of it. The themes themselves are great because WordPress websites, you look at WordPress, and Elementor's helped with this a little bit, but almost all of the pages are in the same, like trying to break out of the blog post square. And now with themes in HubSpot, you can do that. You have flexibility. 2 pages don't have to look alike. Now, do they sometimes? Absolutely. Should they? Probably. But they don't have to. It's easy to jumble around and adjust things. So from a scalability standpoint, you add multilingual to the mix. And like, because that's at some point, you can't just scale up where you are. You're going to go into other markets. You cannot beat HubSpot in regards to the scalability of their tool now. They've done so good. And sorry, I'm trying to be not biased towards one or the other, but we've built it in both. I can tell you from experience.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Let me just pause because I know there's some people sitting out there right now and they're like, they're going to skirt around the 2 biggest issues. They're just going to skirt right around the 2 biggest issues. You can't build a membership site on HubSpot. You can do membership in WordPress. You can't do membership in HubSpot. Well, let me just tell you, yes, you can. They have private content, which allows you to build membership sites in HubSpot. Okay, George, sorry, you are going to talk about it. That's right, I am going to talk about it. The other thing that you're probably thinking that we're going to skirt around is, well, I can't build a learning management system inside of HubSpot. I can do it in WordPress. I can do LearnDash or whatever it's in WordPress. Guess what? You can build a learning management system in HubSpot. Why? Because the guy on this interview, Remington Begg, Impulse Creative, created hublms.io, which is actually a theme that allows you to do learning management systems inside of HubSpot. So when we talk about it's scalable, we're not just talking about the marketplace themes modules. We're talking about like big ideas. You need a dashboard for your operations team. You should call us. Anyway, let's move on. Remington, the next thing that we want to talk about here is social media. So when you think of HubSpot or WordPress, I'll let you pick which way you want to go here, and I'll take the other one. When you think of social media, what comes to mind?
We're talking website, WordPress versus HubSpot CMS platform. Neither of them have social media. Now, you add a plugin. We could have several plugins. Now, you could have social sharing on both of them out of the gate, depending on the theme you use or the plugins you install in WordPress. Comes out of the box for like the blog features and even some of the page features on the HubSpot side. But social media publishing is a whole nother thing. And now with that goes back to your reporting thing. I'm going to jump on the HubSpot side because I actually don't know much about what functionality is available for the WordPress side. You have in-app functionality to be able to manage social media. And when I say manage, I mean post from multiple people's profiles, multiple people's company profiles, tracking campaigns, which is probably one of the most important pieces, and then having a variety of scheduling and features amongst all of the main social tools, right? And I'm saying main social tools because if you're like, oh, I can post on Clubhouse, no, the answer is no. You can't post on Clubhouse yet because it just came out, but the main ones. But when we look at the features of that set, that needs or requires CMS Marketing Hub Professional. Now, there's a cost to that, but the benefits far go beyond the cost of just the social, because now you all of a sudden you get automation, you get all these other things, and that's a different video. But the social functions, being able to, you could follow that guy from North Carolina or George through all of those steps. He liked this post, he went to this page, he clicked this pay button, and he bought. That's the path. That's the magic of the social tools and the ability of connecting the dots.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because, I mean, the fact that in HubSpot you have publishing, you've got, Twitter listening, it just is so easy. And I have to tell people, like, if you use HubSpot and you're going to do your social media, by all that is holy, please check out the Chrome social extension. I can't tell you how many people we train or onboard and they're like, oh, I didn't even know there was like this extra tool that made my life like super easier. And the reason I'm leaning into that is because with WordPress, honestly, you're going to have to do something like a free Hootsuite account or a cheap paid Hootsuite account or Agora Pulse or Sprout Social. There's going to be Jetpack, yeah, there's going to be something that you're going to have to add to it, whether free, but if you want some good features, and again, I'm talking business, not solopreneur, not like hobbyist, but like if you're a business, you got multiple people, a team that's like attacking your social because it's like a strategy that you sat down and actually thought about and put into place versus like willy-nilly, you're going to need a tool, and it's not going to be WordPress natively. It's probably not going to be a plugin. It's going to be another tool that you have to pay for. So again, social just kind of come along for the ride with that marketing HubSpot Pro and above levels. Okay, here's the other thing that boggles my mind, Remington. WordPress, HubSpot, like if you're a business, you're there to get found online, to generate leads, and to drive revenue. I want everybody that's watching this to ask themselves, how does my WordPress website right now drive leads? Is it attached to a CRM? Is it a CRM that is enough that allows my sales team to actually do anything with it? Is it a plugin that for every contact is added is slowing your database, like it's bloating and slowing your website down? Like, you have to stop and think about that because, again, by default, vanilla WordPress, there is no CRM. Now, in the comments below, if you use WordPress, I want you to let me know right now, let Remington and me know, what CRM do you currently use with your WordPress website? Because we're curious, we want to know. But with that said, Remington, talk about how HubSpot is just like, it's not connecting to, it is.
It is, right? So as you're talking about WordPress and the CRM, my perfect word picture for this is when we talk to customers, like this is a couple of years ago. So talk to me about how many leads you've gotten from your website in the past 2 weeks. I don't know. Let me look. And like you hear them type in and then you hear them like shuffling their mouse and then they come back around. They're like 42. And we're like, awesome. So where did you get that information? They're like, oh, Outlook. I searched for the word website lead. They're right there. Is the problem, because how many of those turned into customers? That's what everyone pays attention to. How many of those didn't? And so when people start thinking about that, that's the power of a CRM in general. And I really want to know what the CRMs people are using, because there's a whole segment of people that need help in that regard. But for HubSpot, someone fills out a contact form, it gets dropped in. Do they get an email to their Outlook or their Gmail saying, hey, new lead from blankety blank? 100% they do. But guess what? It also goes into a list so you could follow up, or better yet, someone else could follow up to make sure that those leads are getting followed up with. I love that you were talking about, you add one more contact in that system, it just starts to slow down that stuff. What about spam? Good Lord. Can you imagine the amount of spam you could get if you don't have another plugin to prevent it? Or over on HubSpot, yes, you could still get spam, but it's not going to bloat and slow down your website. It goes into your CRM and you can call that stuff later. But the data layer that is under the foundation of the website, because the CRM and HubSpot CMS are combined, is incredible, because that enables smart forms where you could ask different questions completely based on what you know about someone. It enables smart fields and progressive profiling, which some of those features are each additional functionality on WordPress. But the best and the part that I love the most is smart content. You can change out the context of the content. You could make the background of your hero image on your homepage oil and gas for your oil and gas people, or healthcare for the healthcare folks. How powerful is that as a way to increase conversions? And it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact you have the context of the CRM as the backbone of the CMS.
Here's the thing. We literally need to do a part 2 of this, because we have been educating you folks for 30 to 35 minutes, and you might have questions about conversions, call to actions, content, a little thing called HubDB. Can you do A/B testing? What about smart personalized content? How about security or cost? Or you might be wondering about connecting the two together. Well, guess what? That's what we're going to cover in the next episode. This is going to be a 2-part episode video of HubSpot versus WordPress. So if you've gotten value out of this video, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe. Remember, the timestamps are below. You can jump around. We've got all sorts of links down there for resources as well. Remember to be a happy, helpful, humble human. And Remington and I, well, we'll see you in the next video.